Hey, welcome back to Forest County, Pennsylvania, and the Forest County Outback channel where we combine history with the outdoors. Today, we're heading back to Newtown. Now, in our previous video, we explored some of the history and the remains of Newtown. Today, we're going to continue that, and we've got lots of before and after photos, or then and now photos. And this is Forest County Outback number 44, Newtown, part 2. Stick around till the end of the video. We have a lot of vintage photos in this one. I know at the end of the previous video we kind of did a cursory examination of the mill site. We're going to get a little more in depth today because the sawmill, that was the reason for Newtown's existence. And we're standing down, that's the lower end of the tail race from the mill. And the mill sat up there where those there's an apple tree there, and a couple other, it's leafing out, and a couple trees behind it. That's where the actual mill sat, in that area. And over there's the bridge. And we'll be showing some photos of the mill here as we go along. So here's the mill race. You can see there was some stone lining on the banks. Well, sorry, when I said that, it was where that apple tree, the mill was where that apple tree was leafing out. At a bad perspective. It's further up here where those two trees are further on, 2, 3, whatever. And they used to stack lumber down along in here. And you can see on some of the photographs, you can see the lumber piles. And eventually they would get a railroad siding in here, and they would be able to ship lumber out by rail. And over in that direction, if you look on this photograph, you'll see some sheds over there. And they sat over like where this side of those pine trees, I think this side of this pine tree. No, over here. Yeah, okay, right over in that area. So here we are. At the end of the last video, we were looking at these timbers and this flooring in here from the other bank. Okay, and then the mill sat back in here and out here too, also. And then that straight ahead was the log pond in the distance, and the mill race came through that wide gap in there. Be interesting to see how many other timbers and floor and everything is underneath all that silt over there. So there's the end of the tail race, and you can see in some of these photos they were stacking lumber along the creek, and that was this bench over here. Remember, they didn't have a rail connection until 1892. So until then they were floating their lumber and timbers out by the creek, and a lot of this bench has eroded over the years. And then right up here Those sheds that show up in the later photographs, they were in this area here. See, there's stone piers here, all through here. And you can sort of see the outline of the building here. And then the S&T railroad grade is up that way, and the mill was over that way. This is the tail race. And this was the area of the sawmill. It'd be interesting to have some interior photos of that mill to see the layout. And then this area here would have been the mill race. Water came through this gap, and if that was the floor of the mill down there, there's a whole lot of silt accumulated in here over the years. What would be really cool would be get a core sample out of some of these timbers, do dendrochronology on it, get a date on them. I think that would help a lot to clear up confusion about the mills. See, I've read an article that in 1880 Wheeler and Duesenberry had 3 mills here, and Whitmire and Bauer had 2 mills. And I'm pretty skeptical of that. I think somebody was reading their history wrong, because I just find like a mention in a couple accounts, but no real verification of that. I think it was just something that somebody dreamed up later. When they said 3 mills, I think for Wheeler and Duesenberry they probably meant this mill, the Endeavor mill, and well, actually there were 2 mills at Endeavor. I think that's what they were talking about. I don't think there were 3 mills here. I would really, really love to do an archaeological dig on this site. Or at least the geophysics, ground penetrating radar. You had the bridge over the raceway, and then the mill right here. And then those raised berms over there, that was separate the log pond from Tynasty Creek. Now I've got a couple photos taken from approximately in this area of the mill and the crew. Now we are on that road that goes through the middle of Newtown. That's looking down towards the bridge. The mill would be to the left. And we are standing on the grade of the Sheffield-Tynast Railroad. Now Newtown would not have a rail connection until 1892, which was kind of late in the game. And how they got it was pretty convoluted. Teddy Collins owned the property downstream from Newtown, and he owned the property upstream from Newtown. And he had connected his mills at Nebraska, Mayberg, and Kellettville with the Salmon Creek Tionesta Valley Railroad, and he didn't have an outside connection. Okay, it was a landlocked railroad. He didn't have a connection to the nationwide rail system. Now, Wheeler and Dusenberry did at West Hickory. They built a railroad up Beaver Valley called the Hickory Valley Railroad, oddly. But it did a switchback, came up over the mountain, down Ross Run, and joined Collins Railroad at Ross Run Junction. So that gave them both an outlet to the wider national rail network. It was not a very good one. Hickory Valley Railroad was largely a logging railroad, but they did cooperate on getting a rail connection for both of them. Then they spent several years sniping at each other over the freight rates they were charging each other. Now, eventually Collins would extend his railroad up to Sheffield, and it became the Sheffield and Tionesta Railroad, and now he had a direct, easier connection to the outside world. Now, referring back to that 1897 photograph, as the road goes past the mill uphill, it crosses the S&T grade, and there's a large white building on the left-hand side of the road above the railroad grade. And that was up here. That was the company store. So that porch would have been on this side. Main part of the building here, with this very large cellar hole and these piers for the extension out back. Looking down towards the mill. And then we're going to take a little walk further up the road here. Now, I gave you some wrong information in the last video. I said Henry Dusenberry came here in 1867 to manage this mill here. It was actually William Dusenberry. That was Henry's son, and he built what was described as a palatial house, and it was on this site here. And in that, going back to that 1897 photograph, it's up above the store and it's mostly hidden behind trees, but the cellar hole is here. The last people to occupy this site, or this house, was the Osgood family. And this building stood here until all these buildings stood here till 1940, when the Corps of Engineers chased everybody out. And even after the mill shut down, Wheeler and Dusenberry did use this as a company farm for several years. It's everything you find like this out in the woods, every foundation, every cellar hole, every whatever, There's a story behind it. Story of like real people. Now again, going back to the photograph, across the road from the Dusenberry house, you'll see a barn. And the foundation stones are over here. They had quite a view from up here. And over there across the creek where my little blue car, actually it's my wife's little blue car, my truck is broke down, is sitting. That's Town Hollow, and the township building sat over there. It was a 2-story white frame building. Now this is another barn. The one we just looked at is right back there. This does not show up on that photograph. This was built later by Wheeler and Dusenberry. Like I said, they operated this as a company farm, and it was pretty fancy. Concrete foundation. There's a concrete floor under here. And this barn burned down. They had a hay fire in here, but like I said, it doesn't show on the photo on that photograph. But yeah, this was a company barn. And the Dusenberry house was up over in that direction. And then that barn in the photograph over there. Now down over here, there was a little, there was a farmstead here. And we'll go take a look at that. So this is the cellar hole from the house. In the photo, it's largely hidden by trees. So there's the mill there, the road behind us, and going out towards that apple tree that's just starting to bloom. That is where the siding came in from the S&T, It came up and ended right about here. Now again, referencing that photo. That little group of trees down there, that's the company store. The Duesenberry house was over here, and there was a trail that came over this way, and there's a barn. This barn here, and this is the site of that. Okay, there's the stone pier there. This would be on the uphill side of it. Looking at that photo, there's a couple houses over here, and the schoolhouse is out that way. We're gonna go see if we can find any traces of those. All right, this area here, I believe, I'm not sure, but I believe that this was the site of the schoolhouse. When Hamilton Stowe came here in 1844, he established the school at his own expense. And this building, the building that was here, was, I think, built in 1848, and Stowe largely funded that. He also, he's a very, very religious person, and he brought in hymnals and other things to conduct church at his house. And yeah, but anyhow, I can't be sure, but I think that this was the spot going off that photograph where the school was located. Oh yeah, I kind of forgot to mention, that's where we think the school was. That barn I was talking about was way over there, and there were some houses in between. I really didn't find anything definite. I mean, I'm sure I walked over the site of them, but there was really nothing that would catch your eye to say that there was a house there at one time. So we have a photo taken roughly from this area here. So here's the site of that barn. It was in the middle of the photograph. A lot of foundation stones. And then over here, by that, up under that apple tree, see there's a little shop, little shed behind the barn. And that was the site of this. Now what I think this was a blacksmith's forge. And then the log pond was right over there. This is the site of the Rudolph house. As you can see, this photo was taken many years after it had been abandoned. The Rudolphs eventually bought property from Wheeler and Duesenberry on the other side of the creek and established a farm over there. The house is still standing. Now in 1880, one of the Rudolph's sons, Albert, they called him Bert, was around 18 months to 24 months old, around in that area. And he disappeared from this house. And he was in the house with his mother and his grandmother. Mom went outside for whatever reason. When she came back, they realized Bert was gone. He apparently took the opportunity to sneak out of the house. They did a quick search of the area, didn't find anything. So they raised the alarm. The Newtown was up that way, about less than a half mile. The guys from the mill turned out. They searched the area, never found a trace of the boy. And they concluded that he had been fallen into the creek and been swept away and drowned. He had a fascination with Tionesta Creek for some reason, and he'd been caught playing there several times. And at this time, when he disappeared, the creek was in flood stage. So he had in fact been swept down the creek. About 5 or 6 weeks later, his body was recovered in a ice jam down in President. So he had been swept down 12 miles down Tionesta Creek into the Allegheny River, and another 7 or 8 miles down to President. So this was not a happy story. I have several vintage photos here, some of them before and after. So hope you enjoy. This is one of my favorite photos, probably taken around 1900 from downstream. And that's seen today. So this is obviously the bridge with the sheds in the background, so it was taken later, probably after the mill shut down. The mill and the dam from the upstream side. This is an S&T locomotive headed across the flats with a load of coal. Another S&T train headed downstream from Nebraska. And that's seen today. And Janie Flynn got her vaccination. And we got some people hanging out on the porch of the company store. There's a mill after it's been shut down for a while. Notice the dam's gone, there's no lumber stacked around, and the mill's falling apart. There's another photo of the mill falling apart. Notice it looks like the bridge deck's missing. I imagine that bridge was rebuilt several times. There's the gang saw from the mill. There's a bridge with the dam completely removed, but it looks like the mill's still standing. Looks like a corner of it off on the right. Now this photo is labeled 1945 flood, which is 5 years after the dam was constructed. I guess they still farmed over there, but notice there's only 2 spans. One is missing. This is the bridge in better days. And here's the last span of the bridge falling down. This is after the mill has been shut down and the log ponds drained. That's the white building is the company store. Notice the remains of the stone-filled timber cribs in the foreground on the right. And we have another view after the mill has been shut down. Notice the log pond's been drained. Now I think this photo was taken in 1893, shortly after Collins ran his Tionesta Valley and Salmon Creek Railroad up through this area, because that grade in the middle of the field looks new, and you notice they're still stacking lumber along the creek. They haven't started shipping by rail yet. And that white building across the creek, that was the township building at the end of Town Hollow. Hey, this is looking down the creek road just below Town Hollow. And you notice there's something in the creek just off the road. We'll get a close-up of that in a minute here. Now I have nothing to add to this picture, but whoops. Now this is the creek road above Newtown. I couldn't get a present day photo because of the vegetation growing up, but those buildings in the distance are at the mouth of Hazelton Run. Well, so now it's called Church Run. So that is a wrap for Forest County Outback 44, Newtown Part 2. That was a long time coming, but we got her done. It was a lot of fun, and so help us out by giving us a like, subscribe if you haven't already, share, comment, and check out our cool stuff on our merch shelf. And let's see what else. Oh, you can follow us on Facebook at the Forest County Outback Facebook group, and it's a private group. You do have to ask to join, and please answer the membership questions. If you don't answer the questions, I will not approve your membership. And you can email me directly at forestcountyoutback.com. So thanks for watching, and we will catch you on the next one.